New Zealand is a country of diverse climatic conditions. It can get very hot and dry, very cold or extremely wet. Storms, even tornadoes, also make life challenging. Add to that the corrosive elements of sand, salt, sulphur, industrial pollution, not to mention earthquakes, and you can see that New Zealand houses have a lot to put up with.
Claddings and roofing are to a house what this jacket and umbrella are to me. They keep the elements outside and keep the occupant dry and warm, if they're in good condition. And as with fashion, claddings play an important part in a home's appearance. But the cliché, don't judge a book by its cover, is particularly true when you're valuing a domestic property.
This video looks at the commoner claddings and roofing materials you'll find and highlights some of the positive and negative aspects. Timber weatherboard is the most common wall cladding. Colonial houses were often clad in heartkauri or rimu, partly for added esteem and partly because heartwood is more resistant to infestation and decay. But today, radiata pine and imported cedar are used. The main problem you're likely to find with timber is rot, caused by moisture, lack of ventilation and infestation. Dry rot can be identified by swelling or puffiness in the timber. It's serious and should be cut out and replaced. Wet rot is less serious because it can usually be treated. Weatherboards too close to the ground or with earth piled up against them are susceptible to rot. Decay in the cladding can mean decay in the framing behind. Probing with a pocket knife or screwdriver will soon tell you if rot is present. Look closely at repair work. New soakers over joints might be hiding rotten weatherboards. A wavy surface can also indicate decay. Borer is found in many homes. The common borer leaves smaller circular holes and, unless extensive, doesn't usually pose a threat. But the two-tooth borer, which leaves larger oval holes, is a serious problem. It can reduce the timber to the consistency of Weet-Bix. Cutting out, burning and replacing the infested part is the only answer. Rusty streaks usually mean that steel nails have been used to fasten the cladding instead of galvanized nails.
Sometimes builders try to stretch their profits by stretching their materials. Weatherboards which don't have sufficient overlap can allow the wind and rain to be driven up between them.
Here's a knotty problem. Knots are denser than the surrounding timber, so paint doesn't stick quite as well. Large knots can crack, allowing moisture in.
Weatherboards don't have to be of timber. Fibre cement, often textured to resemble timber, is a low-maintenance product that's light, durable and not susceptible to rot or infestation. It does still require painting or staining, however.
Composite wood fibre comes in thin, wide boards. It became a media star some years ago, but for the wrong reasons. It suffered from delamination, splitting along the bottom edge, a roughening of the face surface, usually starting within the bottom 50 millimetres of the panel, and indentations or softness around the nail heads. Check for these things when inspecting CWF boards.
Composite wood fibre weatherboard and smooth fibre cement weatherboard can look very similar, so here's how to tell them apart.
In weatherboard form, wood fibre has the bottom edge cut back at an angle and the holding nails are hammered home flush. Fibre cement has the bottom edge cut at a right angle with the front edge roughly arrowed. Also with fibre cement planks, the nails are usually left proud of the surface, as you can see here.
Wood fibre panels are invariably joined to a stud with a metal soaker over them or are mitered and nailed. Fibre cement panels, on the other hand, have plastic jointers.
Aluminium is another material that can be made to resemble weatherboard. Tapping it with your finger will quickly identify it. Aluminium can be either a simple sheet or can incorporate an insulating or composite backing. Check the rounded shoulder area for a build-up of dust and dirt, which can attract and hide corrosion, especially higher up in unwashed areas, such as under the eaves. Plastic, PVC and vinyl claddings look just like timber or aluminium from a distance, but close up they're easily identified by the way they feel. They're easily installed or replaced and require little maintenance. Asbestos cement sidings can still be found, identified by their shape as seen here. From a distance they can give the appearance of being weatherboards. Asbestos becomes brittle with age and is easily cracked and damaged.
Apart from weatherboards, sheet products are also used as wall claddings. Plywood, for example, adds a lot of bracing strength to a building, and properly treated has a life of 50 years.
Parallel cracks in plywood cladding occur because the surface layer of plywood is rigidly attached to the layers below and can't contract or expand easily in response to changes to temperature and humidity. However, its appearance is a feature, and properly weatherproofed, the cracks are not a problem. Some fibre cement sheet products are intended for textured coatings and are jointed to give the appearance of a single uninterrupted facing. They're not suitable, however, for structures such as pole houses, which might move and flex. Asbestos-based fibre cement cladding can still sometimes be found, but it's not always easy to identify in sheet form. The age of the building provides a good clue. Asbestos was phased out in 1982, so materials made after that date will be asbestos-free.
Exterior particle board has also had a turbulent history. Less than 7 years after its introduction in the 1970s, some of the panels were found to be disintegrating from the bottom up. In most cases, the affected part was cut off and replaced with a treated timber skirt, but in some cases, complete recladding was needed.
Corrugated iron as wall cladding is found mainly on colonial houses. Any rust, crumbling patches, holes or gouges will be easily spotted, but difficult to remedy. Veneers combine durability, attractiveness and low maintenance with the flexibility of timber framing. They can be of brick, split concrete block or concrete. You might occasionally find a veneer wall that bows or sweeps, possibly due to inadequate or broken fastenings, but this would be unusual. These weep holes allow moisture to escape. They're not always present, so check for warping, cracks or bulges. If you don't find any of these problems, and the house is 5 years old or older, there should be nothing to worry about.
Things you can worry about are cracks. In individual bricks, they're not too serious, but if they continue up from the foundations, it's a problem. Crumbling mortar can also let in moisture. Brick cavity walls are relatively uncommon in New Zealand. As well as being a protective cladding, the wall is a major structural component of the house, so it deserves a close inspection.
Bricks can deteriorate through chemical action. White powder on the surface is an indication that salts have been carried to the surface of the brick by moisture evaporation, but it's not really a problem. However, thin wafers breaking off the surface, also known as spalling, is a problem.
Mortar can also deteriorate. The most common sign is hairline cracks running randomly in the bond joint. Look for cracks which meander from the horizontal to vertical and back again. Probing the mortar with your trusty pocket knife or screwdriver will tell you much about the mortar's condition. Solid plastering, which includes stucco and rough cast, is a cement-based plaster applied to a base surface. Wire mesh helps reinforce it. Many different base materials are used, including fibre cement, plywood, concrete, even polystyrene. You might be able to check the type of base by looking along the foundation line at the bearer, or if possible by viewing the base from under the floor. Cracks are one of the most common problems with solid plaster. New plaster shrinks as it dries, and initial shrinkage cracks aren't usually anything to worry about.
they'll look old and worn with softer edges and will possibly contain cobwebs, dust and/or dirt. New cracks, however, will be more sharply defined and could indicate ground movement, further settlement or deterioration of the framing behind. If the crack is low down, check the foundations for the continuation of the crack. If it also affects the concrete, it could be serious and warrants further investigation. Moisture penetrating the plaster can cause the mesh underneath to rust, leaving telltale streaks on the exterior. Where it's bad, the rust can burst off sections of the plaster. Moisture penetration into the cladding itself can cause it to rot or crumble. Segments of the wall fall off, exposing the mesh underneath. Smaller areas of around 60 square centimetres can be easily repaired, but larger areas mean sometimes the entire wall has to be replastered. So be suspicious of evidence of recent painting, especially in isolated patches. Some pre-Second World War houses had no damp proofing or building paper between the framing and plaster, so extensive decay might be found in the studs, bottom wall plates, ends of joists and bearers. A check from below the floor should show if building paper is present. Insulating cladding is usually a timber frame with a sandwich of polystyrene topped by a type of fiberglass or nylon reinforcing mesh with a plaster finish. You can get a clue as to its real nature by tapping it. It's critical that insulating cladding is properly fitted around windows and doors to prevent moisture penetration. And because it doesn't have a high resistance to impact, look low down for damage from such things as lawnmowers and car bumpers. With cladding, what you see isn't always what you get. The primary cladding may have been overclad or even replaced completely for any number of reasons. Many overcladding materials are the same as those used for primary cladding, and many of the points we've covered also apply. There are some things to watch for, however, particularly where a house has been overclad. With aluminium or galvanized steel weatherboards, press the cladding half a metre or so above the ground. If it's spongy, the timber underneath may be rotting, possibly due to a lack of airflow. Imitation stone veneer is actually concrete and so adds considerably to the weight of the house. Since the foundations may not be designed for the extra load, look for subsidence by sighting along the walls. Where the overcladding is attached as sheets, check the pointing where the sheets meet. If they're coming away, it could be a sign of possible fastening failure from behind. Imitation brick comes in sheet form. On older claddings, look for fungal growth or moss, salt staining and crumbling mortar. Houses prone to movement may show cracks in the surface. Also, check the condition of flashings, joints, and the integrity of the structure behind. Plaster is sometimes used as overcladding, and there are some clues to show this. Check to see if the wall is almost flush around windows and doors. Higher up, there might be a rough finish around the eaves. If overcladding is done well, there should be little evidence of primary cladding. However, as with plaster, the walls might be almost flush with the doors and windows. And by looking under the lower edge or from right under the floor, you might be able to see the original cladding. In some cases, overcladding is obvious. 2 weatherboard walls and 2 brick walls almost certainly indicate overcladding. Even full overcladding can still be at odds with the style of the house and the neighbourhood in general. The correct attachment of cladding is of prime importance, and it's vital the manufacturer's instructions have been followed. Faulty attachment can lead to moisture penetration. Sighting along the wall will quickly show any signs of bulging, and incorrect flashing of joints and weatherproofing around openings will also be visible. Check for any signs of dampness.
perhaps due to moisture being trapped between the overcladding and the original.
And also for the possibility that the overcladding was nailed directly over decaying or damaged weatherboards or framing. Overcladding can, in some cases, reduce the natural ventilation, particularly around the base, resulting in extensive decay in the subfloor framing timber. Inside, look for signs of dampness around windows and take a deep sniff. Musty smells might mean rot, perhaps in the framing.
For cladding to give total protection, flashings and drainage have to be up to scratch. Check flashings are properly installed and in good condition.
Remember that nearly all cladding, whether low maintenance or not, needs regular washing, particularly under eaves and surfaces which allow build-up of deposits. This is particularly important near the sea, geothermal areas and other areas where corrosive elements are present. So check these areas for signs of trouble.
And a final reminder before we leave claddings, foliage can cause and hide problems, so have a good look behind it. Now let's check out the roof. Walk around the property and look at the roof from all angles, checking for damage, such as rust, broken or missing tiles, including ridge tiles.
Check that the guttering and downspouting are in good condition and not obviously blocked, causing overflows. Look particularly for dips in the roof line, which could mean subsidence or faults within the roof structure.
If the property is divided by a central masonry wall, as in the case of two flats, the roof may dip away either side. Now this isn't serious unless the dip is dramatic or appears recent. If you think the roof deserves a closer look, you'll probably have to take certain steps. Many roofing materials are the same as the wall claddings we've been looking at, such as corrugated steel, aluminium and asbestos cement. They therefore share similar characteristics and problems. But with a roof being more exposed to the elements, there's more likely to be evidence of wear and tear. With steel roofing, check the roofing nails aren't loose. Look for any damage or repair work, noting its position in case you need to check it from inside.
And check the flashing, especially where roof pitches meet, and around chimneys and parapets, which can be prone to leaking. Check for rust where the sheets overlap and at the ends near the spouting. Flaky paint usually means inadequate preparation. Where a short length of roofing steel has been slipped under the old roof, it usually suggests extensive rust underneath, and complete replacement must be a consideration.
If you do walk across the roof, note how it feels underfoot. Extra springiness could indicate problems underneath. Aluminium sheet roofing is prone to more expansion and contraction than steel, so the fastening holes can become elongated. This may allow moisture to get in. Also, check for star cracks.
And aluminium is softer than steel, so take care if you walk on it. You're supposed to be looking for problems, not causing them. There are three main types of roofing tile. Stone chip-coated pressed metal tiles have a life expectancy up to 30 years in mild environments with regular cleaning, but may need to be spot primed or recoated in some places after 10 to 20 years. Acrylic painted pressed metal tiles can also last up to 30 years with regular hose washing, provided they're the correct grade for their environment. Clay and concrete tiles are relatively maintenance-free, but moss infestation and frost penetration can cause spalling and breakdown of the pointing in the ridge tiles. They're heavy and add significantly to the weight of the house, especially when wet. Clay tiles are an orangey-yellow colour, whereas concrete tiles have a range of colours. You'll soon become experienced in recognising which is which. Shingles can be cement-based, timber or asphalt, and can last over 20 years. Natural slate is imported. It's extremely durable. In New Zealand, possibly lasting longer than the house itself, and it's also expensive. Unless slates are damaged, they suffer few problems. Instead, pay closer attention to the flashings, especially on roofs with valleys. Any deterioration in the actual slate is best observed from underneath. Butyl is often used for flat roofs in the form of a membrane. It's tough and long-lasting, about 25 to 30 years, and requires little maintenance. Flat roofs can suffer from ponding where drainage is inadequate. In dry weather, the stains will still be evident. In some cases, complete re-roofing is required, especially where the existing roof has deteriorated markedly. This requires the complete removal of the original cladding and replacement with appropriate new roofing. Base materials must be sound or replaced, and any suspect material should be dealt with first. Where a roof is still relatively sound and the roofing timbers are free from decay, over-roofing is possible, as in this case. Over-roofing is seen as a cheap and quick option, but check the old roof if you can to make sure both it and the supporting structure are in good condition. If you feel an internal inspection of the roof is warranted, then check the ceilings from below first for sagging and water stains and note their positions. Here's where your torch comes in handy. Before you turn it on, take time for your eyes to get used to the dark up there. Look for signs of daylight, particularly around the chimney. If the light can get in, then the weather probably can too. Look for signs of leaks. In some cases, the building paper may have rotted, and there may be more obvious signs such as buckets and saucepans to catch the drips. Insulation may be damp, or there might be evidence of water drops in the dust between joists. Look also for water staining on the timbers. And look closely for any sign of deterioration in slate roofs. Powdering and flaking suggest an inferior quality of slate, although if it's only minor deterioration, the roof could still be good for another 30 years. So that's the cover story. As you've seen, claddings come in all shapes and sizes, but generally each type is treated the same, whether they're on the walls or on the roof. And with practice, you'll be able to quickly summarise the types, characteristics and conditions of a property's claddings. Take time to familiarise yourself with them and to become able to recognise materials and the significance of problems, damage and other faults. Not only will you benefit, but so will the potential buyer or present owner from the application of your skill and knowledge. Remember, you're not expected to have the skills of an architect or engineer, but some knowledge of building practices and good powers of observation are useful. Where specialist knowledge is required, the assistance from organisations such as Brands, the Standards Association, the Master Builders Federation and the Timber Industry Federation is invaluable. So when in doubt, ask. Oh dear, rain again.